The story of innocent victim Emily. A high school student, Emily, is found murdered in her family's home. Detective Johnson is assigned to investigate the case. It's discovered that Emily wasn't the intended target. The bullet had been fired from a distance and entered through an open window. Johnson talks to Emily's parents and finds out that they don't have any enemies. Johnson studies the nearby houses and the possibility of any security cameras that could have spotted the killer. Johnson discovers that the neighbors had heard a gunshot the night Emily was killed. Johnson starts to suspect a local drug dealer, Mr. Ajay, of being behind the murder. Johnson learns that Emily's brother, who had drug-related debts, had recently been threatened by Mr. Ajay. Johnson discovers that Mr. Ajay had a history of violence and has been arrested several times. Johnson questions Mr. Ajay, but he denies his involvement in the murder. Johnson begins tracing Mr. Ajay to get more clues. Johnson discovers that one of Mr. Ajay's employees quit his job just before Emily's murder. Johnson tracks down the former employee and finds out that he had stolen drugs from Mr. Ajay. Johnson discovers that the former employee had started selling these drugs on his own and had gotten into trouble with another drug dealer. Johnson learns that the dealer is notorious for hiring hitmen to take out competition. Johnson starts investigating the connections between this new drug dealer, Mr. Davis, and the hitman. Johnson tracks down the hitman and arrests him. He questions him and discovers that he had been hired by Mr. Davis to take out the former employee, but he got the wrong address. He further investigates Mr. Davis and realizes that he had a grudge against someone living in the same neighborhood as Emily's family. He discovers that Mr. Davis had been involved in a brief romantic fling with Emily's older sister, Rachel. He suspects that Mr. Davis targeted Emily's family to get to Rachel. He further investigates Mr. Davis's movements during the night Emily was killed. Johnson discovers that Mr. Davis's phone was in the vicinity of Emily's house at the time of the murder. He starts to close in on Mr. Davis and arrest him for the murder of Emily. Johnson's work becomes a national award-winning case. Epilogue. Emily's family uses the insurance money to start a foundation in her name. Rachel breaks up with Josh and starts therapy. The hitman is sentenced to life in prison. Johnson is promoted, and his team is given better resources to tackle future cases.